episode of Ango in the Morning is brought to you by our good friends at Ewin Racing. Now, it's actually kind of funny because if you are a viewer on this channel, and more specifically, if you watched my live streams in the past, you may have noticed that there was always this joke that I was sitting on a broken office chair. And that's actually legitimately true. Like, I was sitting on one of those mesh black really cheap office chairs. The wheels kept falling off. I mean, it was ridiculous, right? And we kind of joked about it, and you know, I was kind of amazed to see that when I was looking for a really good office chair for what I do, you would see office chairs for over $1,000, and that was something that was totally unexpected. Now, obviously, in the last month or so, you may have noticed in my videos that I have this gaming chair that is now in frame, and there's a good reason for that, because Ewin Racing has actually hooked me up with a really good deal by sponsoring this channel. And the cool thing is, you guys could actually get rewarded for it just by being a viewer on this channel. Now, if you're somebody who is a content creator like me, and you're sitting down at your desk, sending out emails, editing videos, going live, doing all of these different things for hours and hours on end, you don't want to be sitting on a cheap office chair, and you probably don't want to spend $1,000+ for an office chair, because realistically, that just sounds ridiculous. Now, the cool thing with Ewin Racing is that it actually has a really high quality chair with great lumbar support, and of course the armrest to make you feel very comfortable. But with this chair specifically, you also get the upper pillow on the head, neck area, and you also get one on the bottom. This is actually really helpful for posture. I've noticed that it's actually been very comfortable for me to sit down, make my videos, go live. I never get uncomfortable. I feel comfortable. And the best part is too, if I do want to, I can put my office chair back and lay down and do all of these different things, and I don't have to worry about it breaking. So, you know, here's some things to take into account. When you're going to buy an office chair, when you're going to have long gaming sessions on your computer or on your console, and you're sitting there all the time, you do not want to be sitting on a really crappy office chair. It's not comfortable. It's not good for you. The support is terrible. Ewin Racing actually takes care of that. And by them partnering with my YouTube channel, we're able to take care of you guys as well. They always have great deals. The best part is you can use code ANGO. The discount is absolutely sick. And the best part is there's actually a variety of styles to choose from as well. So you guys have specifically noticed the gray chair in the background. I did that actually on purpose because for me, as you guys know, I use a green screen. I wanted a neutral color. But I go on Instagram, I go on Twitter, I go in Discord, I see your guys' gaming setups and your guys' tech setups, and I know a lot of people are doing RGB. They want the colors, they want all these different options. They are literally setting up their, you know, YouTube setups and gaming setups with this idea that, you know, everything's going to be colorful and aesthetically pleasing. Well, with Ewin Racing, because there's so many different series of chairs to choose from, different material, different colors, you have so many different options to choose from. And guys, if you are seriously interested in making a big change to your setup and you want to be comfortable and you don't want to spend $1,000 doing it, consider checking out ewinracing.com and use code ANGO. Get hooked up with a sweet deal. Shout out to them for hooking me up with this office chair. This gaming chair is literally so sick. I absolutely love it. And if you guys want to take advantage of a deal, you know the information is in the description down below. Welcome everybody to Ango in the Morning. Now, technically, this is episode 6. Episode 5 got released a year ago. So yeah, that's kind of the funny thing. But we're actually doing morning live streams at around 10 or 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Plus, I'll be doing my live review shows. The review shows are called the Ango Show Live. These shows are called Ango in the Morning because, well, it's the morning and I'm Ango. So today we got a lot of things to talk about. We're going to talk about Bray Wyatt. This type of show is more opinion-based, more of like a podcast type of thing, but also it is still very community-oriented. So I'll throw your comments up on the screen. Your super chats will be shown on the screen. I'll answer your guys' questions. We're going to have conversations about things in wrestling that I want to talk about. Today, for example, we're going to talk about Bray Wyatt. Is he a failure? Is he a success? What about LA Knight? We got to talk about that pitch black match. Why I feel so strongly about that. And there's just so many things we're going to talk about in this video. Also, a WWE superstar is joining the UFC. In what capacity? What's going to go down? Is it a smart move? Is it a bad move? Why I kind of don't like it. And of course, I'm going to be answering your guys' questions. I'm going to be answering all of your comments in the chat. So if you guys want to, interact, if you guys got questions, you guys want to talk about AEW, WWE, Impact, New Japan, whatever it may be, Ango in the Morning is the show in which we are going to do that. And we're going to do that today. But really quick, some chat commands. If you guys are interested in learning more or finding links, you can actually use the chat commands. Shout out to Nightbot. It's all automated. Everything will pull up, and it's going to be perfect. So, guys, let's kick things off with some comments in the chat, and then I'll be happy to go into some topics. So, first and foremost, we have quite a few people in the chat. Insanity says, "Good morning, Ango. This question is open for anyone. Should Bray have returned as the Fiend?" And I am actually super glad this comment popped up because, truth be told, I am still very torn on Bray Wyatt. And it's not that I don't like Bray Wyatt. A few months ago, I think it was October, I talked about Bray Wyatt, and I said, the thing is, Bray Wyatt cannot afford a loss when he returns. And my issue is with him versus LA Knight, both of these guys cannot afford to lose. Sure enough, we get a squash match. And the squash match that we get, like, I think the idea of the squash match isn't a big deal because it's all character driven, and LA Knight justified, like, by losing. He still, he wasn't really scared of Bray Wyatt. But then it kind of like, we see this version of Bray Wyatt who is the most human version of Bray Wyatt, and he doesn't have a mask. Yes, he has some face paint, but is this version of Bray Wyatt like the Fiend? And I was trying to think of this, like, is this the new version of the Fiend? It's not. And I think the issue is WWE should have definitely done something in this situation to differentiate Bray Wyatt as a more deadly option. I don't feel like they did that quite a bit with this match. But also, we got to talk about Pitch Black. The Pitch Black match, I think everybody's going to have a different take on it. I think everybody's going to have a different view on the Pitch Black match. And I think a lot of people are also going to have differing opinions from me because, truth be told, I watched it the first time and I was like, I'm not sure if this was good. I'm not sure if I like this. But it's not so much that I hated the Pitch Black match more than anything. I think what I hated was the fact that it was still Bray Wyatt versus LA Knight. And, the biggest issue that Bray Wyatt has ever had in the WWE is whenever he feuds against somebody, whoever is coming out on the other end of the feud, they end up typically getting ruined. They literally have to bounce back. It takes them a while to bounce back. And I do fear for LA Knight. And what is the scenario going forward with LA Knight in WWE? Because if LA Knight, and this is just my opinion, and people are going to agree, some people will disagree, but this is the reality. If LA Knight is in a situation where he does not bounce back after this loss, then I blame the booking of Bray Wyatt. The Uncle Howdy, the theatrics, the Firefly Funhouse, the Fiend, whatever it may be, whatever is associated with Bray Wyatt is going to be the cause of LA Knight's downfall. And that's super unfortunate. And the only way I could think differently is if WWE bounces back with LA Knight and makes him go over in some very big feuds after the fact. And I don't know if WWE is going to necessarily do that. And this is the reality. Bray Wyatt is very character driven. And I've always said Bray Wyatt doesn't need championship belts. He is not he's not driven by being a champion or the best wrestler or whatever. He tells stories. I think they do a good job of telling stories. They are very creative with Bray Wyatt. And I said this, I said, wow, Bray Wyatt and LA Knight's build has been so incredible. But the more and more that I watched that match, I went back and watched it and I saw LA Knight get squashed. I think the biggest issue that I have is what happens after. Now, if LA Knight is fine, if LA Knight continues to feud with Bray, if LA Knight beats Bray Wyatt, like if they do something cool there where LA Knight looks strong and comes out looking strong after this, then Bray Wyatt is definitely not a failure. But I will go out there and say this publicly. If LA Knight is buried, if LA Knight doesn't get a big feud after this, if LA Knight is not on TV winning matches, if he's not winning meaningful storylines, if he's not working with top superstars after this feud despite the loss, then I am going to consider Bray Wyatt as a very big failure in WWE. And that's actually a really hard pill to swallow, if I'm being completely honest with you guys, because I love his work. I think he is absolutely incredible. But at the same time, too, if the people he is working with are losing and never able to recover from that, that is an issue with the booking and the planning. And this is a very big test for Triple H, because as Triple H, at the end of the day, I feel like everybody kind of feels confident with Triple H that he won't make the same mistake as Vince McMahon. But we saw Hell in a Cell. We saw what happened with Randy Orton and Alexa Bliss. And it's like, this is the most creative character in WWE history. He's got the most in-depth layers to his character and his storytelling and his promos. And there is so much that Triple H has done right in terms of teasing Bray Wyatt and Uncle Howdy and the Firefly Funhouse and all of these different things. But ultimately, if other people aren't benefiting from it, what good is it for Bray Wyatt? He is my favorite superstar in WWE, and it's because of the character-driven stuff. And I think at the same time, too, like, I went back and watched that match, and at first, my first initial thought was, wow, the glow-in-the-dark stuff is really cringy. And then I was like, wow, man, Bray Wyatt is his first return match, because keep in mind, he returned in October or whatever. His first return match is a sponsored match with Mountain Dew. Now, I see people in the IWC talking about this, and I'm just going to give everybody a reality check, okay? Because this is the freaking reality here. Bray Wyatt in the sponsored match is probably going to pay WWE a lot of freaking money. Mountain Dew definitely had to fork over a lot of money for that advertising. And at the end of the day, if you're WWE, most importantly, it comes down to the money if you're WWE. Now, for the fans' perspective, we don't really give a shit if WWE or AEW are making money or not. We care about being entertained. So I feel like having that gimmick match is a little bit of a strange idea, but I totally understand as to why WWE did that. I also understand why WWE had gone the route of, having Bray Wyatt squash in his return match. They are trying to make him seem powerful, right? I get it. But at the end of the day, it came at the expense of LA Knight, who is somebody who shouldn't be losing his first big feud after dropping the Max Dupree gimmick. So I am very, 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 very torn on how I feel about the Bray Wyatt situation, because on one hand, I love it. Even when I went back to watch the match, I'm like, yeah, the squash match makes sense. The post-match theatrics, okay, obviously we got the Uncle Howdy jumping off the thing. He jumped off the platform. He missed LA Knight. I don't really give a shit about that, because at the end of the day, wrestling safety is way more important. But you see the theatrics of it, and I'm like, okay, like, this is cool. I mess with it. Personally, I like the theatrics of wrestling. I like the over-the-top crazy shit. I like stuff like that. And not everybody likes that, and that's completely fine. But me personally, I like it. But I still am hung up on this idea that because of LA Knight being in this situation, I very am fearful for that. And I think this could be a very big failure on WWE's part by not understanding that people who work with Bray Wyatt cannot be in a situation where they're getting decimated in their matches. And by the way, this build was incredible. So you have this incredible build. LA Knight looks incredible, but then they're in this situation where how he is booked after really matters. I personally would like to see LA Knight versus Bray Wyatt continue. And I would actually like to see LA Knight beat Bray Wyatt at a point where Bray Wyatt is vulnerable. And because he beats Bray Wyatt, this is what I would do. And you guys could tell me if you agree or disagree, but if I'm the WWE, I fantasy book a situation. Well, I booked a situation where LA Knight versus Bray Wyatt at Elimination Chamber. And this is going to be the most human version of Bray Wyatt you have ever seen. Bray Wyatt goes into this match. He is not as evil and as sadistic as he was with the face paint, and LA Knight gets the win. It becomes a big upset. However, I think what needs to happen is LA Knight needs to move on. Forget about the rubber match or whatever it may be. Maybe even have Uncle Howdy cost Bray Wyatt, or confront Bray Wyatt and hit Bray Wyatt with his sister Abigail after the match, because after the match, Uncle Howdy could express his disappointment with Bray Wyatt for losing and not being evil and not being sadistic. And then that could set up Uncle Howdy versus Bray Wyatt at WrestleMania. And that would be something I would be more interested in than versus, LA Knight versus Bray Wyatt at WrestleMania for a third time. And if I'm LA Knight, if I'm on top and I get that win, Let's start the news story between Bray and Uncle Howdy. Let's figure out more to that story. LA Knight could take that win, build some momentum, and go against other people. If WWE were to book the scenario like this, I actually genuinely believe WWE will be fine. I genuinely believe that LA Knight will be fine. And again, is it too early to say that Bray Wyatt is a failure right now? Yes, of course it is. But I think ultimately this conversation that we're having about Bray Wyatt and whether he's a failure, whether he's a success, this guy, every person he works with does not benefit from it. And that is why I was so keen on LA Knight not working with him, because my biggest fear actually came true. My big fear was that LA Knight will get decimated. He'll have an incredible build. He'll get the TV time. He'll get the exposure. He'll get over with the fans. People will love it. We knew this. I expected that. And that's what we got. But LA Knight lost. And he didn't just lose in a 30-minute crazy match. No, he lost in a very, very short match. And again, I'm not even mad about the squash match, but the fact that it's LA Knight, who desperately needed to get a win in his first major feud, he ended up getting squashed. And I think that's the concern. So it's too early to say whether Bray Wyatt is a failure. It's too early to say anything about this, because I do believe this story will continue to play out. But I think WWE, and more specifically Triple H as head of creative, needs to be very careful and tread very lightly on how they book LA Knight after that match. As far as the glow in the dark stuff, I hated it at first. I think after I watched it again, I was like, okay, I don't hate it. Everybody has their own thing. I thought that was better than watching the eyesore of the Red Hell in a Cell match. I thought that was ridiculous. And it kind of goes back to Insanity's question about The Fiend. If Bray Wyatt returned as The Fiend, I just would have felt like they're picking up where they left off, which I don't like that. I do like the fact that there's more layers to Bray Wyatt, Uncle Howdy, the Wyatt Six, the characters. Bray Wyatt is a very human version of himself right now. And I think when I'm watching WWE, it's really, 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 really cool to see what they're doing with him. I hope the Fiend character never comes back. I hope they do something different with him in that regard. That's what I would like to see. We're getting a couple super chats. Albert Pons dropped one. He says, I feel with an already full roster, I think Triple H brought back too much talent too quick without fully thinking out creative for everyone. Yes and no, actually. So I normally would I normally would agree with this, Albert. I know me and you have had conversations in the past about this on streams and stuff. But I saw WWE Raw last night, and I just feel like last night, Bronson Reed's in the Elimination Chamber match, Johnny Gargano's in the Chamber match. Triple H is definitely not forgetting about certain people. I think it's just WWE. And it kind of goes back to what I said like several months ago. WWE, Triple H, he inherited a roster that maybe he didn't want. And he's got to work with what he has. So I think to a certain extent, he definitely has too much of a roster, too much of a big roster that's being used. But also at the same time, too, look at what he like. On the contrary to everything I just said, look at some of the people like Maximum Male Models was absolutely nothing under Vince McMahon. With Triple H, it's starting to get over, right? There's certain things that are getting over on WWE television because of Triple H. But also, I looked at the Royal Rumble, and Johnny Gargano did not get a big pop at the Royal Rumble. And everybody talked about how Johnny Gargano would be successful under Triple H. So there is a little bit of an issue there, but it's not something that I necessarily worry about just yet. I think WWE also was in the middle of a lot of stories when people were being brought in and stuff. So it's not so much that he brought in so many returns, I should say. But I think some of the issues that I've noticed with Triple H was he brought in a lot of returns at a time where a lot of people were already in storylines. So Dexter Lumis getting inserted into a storyline with The Miz, okay, cool. But like, what's next, right? Well, there's a whole bunch of other people in storylines right now. So it's really difficult to get Dexter Lumis with those people. Bronson Reed is actually the person that I want to see win the United States Championship at Elimination Chamber. But I do get an idea that WWE might go with a babyface here. So I don't know exactly how I feel about that just yet, but I definitely agree to a certain extent. Not 100%, but to a certain extent, I definitely agree with you, Albert. Thank you for the $5 super chat. We got a super chat from Tattoo Nick for $1.99. It's hard to keep up with Bray's storyline. So the thing is, I pay attention to all of the little nuances. And, me personally, I don't have an issue keeping up with the storyline. I'm paying attention to all of the cryptic stuff. There's a lot of callback. A lot of people don't know this, but with Bray Wyatt's promos and stuff, there's a lot of callback to things that maybe he said or did in WWE as Husky Harris or in NXT, or as Bray Wyatt, the Swamp version, the Wyatt family. So for me, it's actually pretty easy to keep up with it, but I've always been a very close analyzer of Bray Wyatt in WWE. So for me personally, it's like I like the gimmick, I love the storytelling, I love the character. I just don't like how the booking always hurts whoever he's with, and that is a concern for me. And again, it's like right now it's too early for me to say if Bray Wyatt's a failure, but I will say that it will be considered a failure. When WWE had Bray Wyatt go for the WWE Championship years ago, I always scratched my head at that. I always scratched my head at this idea that you need to compete for a world championship on Raw or SmackDown. This is the biggest thing that wrestling fans will probably disagree with me, but I always say this. Albert, Tattoo Nick, I know Myra, and a few others who are in the Discord probably remember me saying this during WrestleMania last year. WWE and AEW is like a freaking Hollywood film set. Every person has a role. And the thing is, in wrestling fans really care about the very, very big main event. And in years past, we saw with Vince McMahon or Tony Khan, that was the thing that got the most attention, was the main event. But those other people in the mid card and the lower card, like, their roles matter too. They should be in storylines that don't involve a championship belt. They can win in those feuds and not win the championship belt. And that would be fine. That would be successful. That would be okay. But I think people automatically think in wrestling, you have to be a champion. And I never believed Bray Wyatt's character should ever be competing for a world championship. The Fiend versus Seth Rollins was the dumbest booking decision ever, because it did not make sense for WWE to put Seth Rollins in that position. Seth Rollins at that time should have been a world champion, and he should have been, even to this day, I think Seth Rollins is one of those guys. He should be up there with Roman Reigns at the top of the card, having these main event level matches. But you have Seth and Bray Wyatt, and you got championship belts, and you got all of these different things, and it just becomes this over like convoluted mess. And I feel like when that stuff happens, especially in the WWE, it's like it's kind of forced, honestly. If you had Bray Wyatt just take out people, eventually go for a world championship, he can lose the world championship match, and it could just be because he's vulnerable. And it makes sense because of the character, right? So to me, I do have to make that very clear. Not everybody needs to be a world champion. Not everybody needs to go for a championship belt. Bray Wyatt's character should not be defined by wins or losses. It should be defined by the story and the character work. Now, if you want Bray Wyatt to become a world champion, you can do that, but you don't need Bray Wyatt to decimate every single person on a title defense within 5 minutes. No, what you can actually do is give Bray Wyatt a championship run, and you can actually have it a relatively shorter run, because at one point he starts to lose his mental fortitude, and literally, like, he starts losing his inner self. He loses his inner demons. He becomes vulnerable. And next thing you know, he can't compete at that top level, because he's got some issues in his head where one day he's crazy and sadistic, and the other day he's a normal person. But the thing is, people would be like, oh, well, that was such a wasted championship reign because he lost. Well, no, it would be a wasted championship reign for Bray Wyatt to hold a championship belt for like literally a year, and then drop it for no reason. So, and that's kind of what WWE has done in the past. So I think it's really important that wrestling fans understand with Bray Wyatt, it's not necessarily that it's hard to keep up with Bray Wyatt's storyline. I think it's hard to keep up with what WWE actually has plans with Bray Wyatt, because Bray Wyatt's storyline and the layers to his storyline always make sense. They're always pretty logical. He's always developing something new. It's always getting you thinking. It's always getting you excited about what can happen next. But then it's like, okay, now we're in a situation where they book the match, and then you kind of forget everything, and you kind of like lose a little bit of like you lose a little bit of touch with it, if that makes sense. So Tattoo Nick, Albert Pons, thank you guys for your super chats. Guys, if you want to drop a super chat, continue to support the channel by dropping a super chat, or check out the donation link in the description down below if you guys want to support the channel. It guarantees that your question will be up on the screen, or your comment, whatever it may be. But definitely consider doing that if you guys want to support the channel. Also, don't forget, we do have these chat commands, and if you want, you could become a member and receive cool perks. We also have sub gifting, which is really cool. You can actually gift a membership to somebody else on the YouTube channel, which is actually really dope. But with that being said, It got me thinking, what went wrong with Bray Wyatt versus LA Knight? That's the question I think I have here for a lot of people, and I'm curious to see what some of your comments are in the chat down below. So let me know in the chat, what do you guys think went wrong with Bray Wyatt? I'm going to read some of the best answers, and yeah, we'll discuss. We're also going to talk a little bit about some other stuff in pro wrestling, but make sure you guys get through. We'll get through this part first. Let's take a look at some of the comments. Um, Nate, the head of Talent TV, says Bray won't be champ anytime soon. Bray is actually one of the characters in WWE who doesn't need the world title. Yeah, so exactly what I was pretty much saying, and I genuinely do believe that. I don't think Bray Wyatt actually needs the championship belt, and I think it's really important to also mention that Bray Wyatt, he can lose a lot. He can. You got to make it make sense logically from a storytelling and character standpoint, but let's make that clear. If WWE wanted Bray Wyatt to lose to LA Knight, they could have made LA Knight win, make LA Knight look strong, and they could have started a storyline for Bray Wyatt fighting his inner demons because he is not that evil person anymore. There is a lot of ways you can do this from a logical standpoint. You choose to do it however you do. Now, I do want to point out as well, I thought Bray Wyatt's face paint was absolutely sick. I think from a creative and presentation standpoint, Bray Wyatt has one of the best presentations in all of wrestling. The light, the Uncle Howdy, and everything associated with Bray Wyatt from a presentation standpoint is really cool. It's very cinematic. It's very it's very horror film like, but also it's still wrestling. So I gotta praise that because I do like that a lot. Let's take a look. There's more stuff in the chat, so we're gonna pull this stuff up right here. So Top Tier says they were pigeonholed into a sponsorship match. Time to get back to some regular matches with regular lighting. Yeah, for sure. And like I said, that's a big thing too. It's a sponsorship. And I see a lot of people. I saw some people on, the Brian Alvarez show or whatever, whatever it is. And I seen some stuff on Twitter floating around, and people are just absolutely hating the fact that WWE does sponsorships. And look, I've always been transparent about this. Anytime there's advertising opportunities that are legitimate, that are good for business, WWE should do them. We saw Zelina Vega show up and dressed up as a character in one of the Street Fighter games, and it makes sense, honestly, that WWE would do something like that. They should absolutely get paid for it. The Royal Rumble had the highest gate in history. It had the highest viewership in history. It had all of these different milestones that they've hit. You should be maximizing. At the end of the day, and I hate to tell you guys this on my live stream, but I'm going to just say it because this is literally how the world works right now. The world is literally all about money. And I hate the fact that it's like that, but that's really what it is, right? Like this life, like these companies are all about the bottom dollar. No matter how much you love something or hate something, we just seen it the other day. Netflix was talking about how they said they never ever canceled a successful show. Now the thing is, we don't know about their viewership and stuff like that. But when Netflix says we've never canceled a successful show, but they cancel shows in general, it's coming down to money. It's the budget that they have to produce the show or to acquire the rights to a show. And if they're not getting signups, if they're not getting people to watch it, if it's not generating any growth for their service, people aren't going to watch it, right? And so therefore, Netflix makes the decision and says, hey, we are not going to move forward with this. The same thing is applicable to WWE. WWE is going to do more of these sponsorships. We saw Austin Theory at Extreme Rules, I think it was, with the Beyblade entrance on the Titantron. We saw Zelina Vega with the Street Fighter character. We saw Bray Wyatt in the Mountain Dew Pitch Black match. We saw the WWE Royal Rumble press conference. They're literally drinking Mountain Dew Pitch Black. They got the logo everywhere. WWE wants to make as much money as possible. And these gimmick matches and stuff is definitely not something that I think will continue happening regularly. But I think we're going to see more of it for sure in the future, right? This is not WWE just simply doing an ad read. What they're actually doing in this situation, and I do think this is smart because at the end of the day, it is a business. At the end of the day, WWE has to make money. At the end of the day, WWE is trying to build successful relationships with these companies to make sure that not only do they do it now, but next time Mountain Dew drops a new flavor, maybe it's not going to be a gimmick match, but at least WWE would advertise Mountain Dew, right? We're going to see it more often. Get used to it. It's like when you're on your phone, you're sitting on Instagram or Twitter or TikTok or whatever, and you get bombarded with ads. That's just the way the world works these days. And WWE has found a way to do it where the company they're advertising gets the maximum exposure, right? I'm sure WWE would get paid more for having a pitch black match versus Michael Cole just reading 30 seconds of an ad. So ultimately, when I see this type of stuff happening in WWE, I don't necessarily love it. I don't love it, but to sit there and say WWE shouldn't do it, well, my friends, I'm analyzing wrestling, and the first thing that comes to my mind when I'm analyzing wrestling is, WWE is clearly doing that to make money. So WWE will continue to do that if they're making money. And I'm sure we'll see something interesting at, WrestleMania, maybe Snickers on a flag or Snickers on a pole match or something. I don't know. I don't know what it is, but I'm just saying, don't be surprised if WWE does it more often. Royal Rumble was incredibly successful. And on top of that, we saw WWE make a shit ton of money and they had a gimmick match. And ultimately, most of the fan feedback was actually relatively positive when it came to this match. So I think WWE will absolutely do it. And, it's just the reality is like WWE is going to make money. Top Tier also says nothing wrong with the sponsorship. It's how you present it. I think that's a very good point. How you present it is very important. A lot of people that I saw personally, not like in Discord or on Twitter, not everybody hated the glow in the dark thing. Initially, I didn't like it. I went back and watched it. I said I didn't mind it. Granted, it was a squash match. If WWE did that match for 35 minutes, glow in the dark, I'd be like, no. But again, it's how you present it. I absolutely agree with this. Rapper says, is Vince in charge of creative? No, he is not. Vince McMahon is not in charge of creative. Thankfully, he's not. And if you're not watching Raw or SmackDown, I would just say watch Raw or SmackDown. You could definitely tell Triple H has his influence all over it. And with that being said, it's just as good as things are right now with WWE. There are some mistakes. Me and Albert kind of pointed out earlier. There's a lot of talent. Some talent definitely don't have plans. Vince McMahon would have made that mistake, and I think Triple H is kind of making that mistake. Not with everybody. Like Karrion Kross is fine, but I look at Johnny Gargano, and I know he's going to be in the Elimination Chamber, and that's cool. But like, what's going to happen for Johnny Gargano? Will Johnny Gargano even be at WrestleMania? Like, these are the things that I'm thinking about. I could see WWE doing an Andre the Giant Battle Royal Memorial match. If that's the case, I could very well see a situation where Johnny Gargano could win that, right? But that's how you know Triple H is in creative control. Bronson Reed's in the Elimination Chamber. That's how you know for sure that Triple H is in creative control. But just keep in mind, if it was Vince McMahon, you'd probably see other people on TV. But again, it's not always about wins and losses. It's not always about being on TV every single week. But they should be involved in some capacity. And that's where I think Triple H right now is somewhat making that mistake. Again, it's a very fixable mistake. It's very small. It's very, very small. But there are certain people like Candice LeRae. For me, maybe she's just happy to be there and whatnot. But they forget about the wins and losses portions of her return. I just don't feel like they've done anything to really make Candice LeRae stand out. Like, who is Candice LeRae? They haven't really done much to explain that to anybody. Whereas Dexter Lumis, they've actually done somewhat of a good job, right? Or if you look on SmackDown, you kind of see the Viking Raiders there, the new and improved Viking Raiders. But WWE has done actually a pretty good job of explaining it and Karrion Kross as well. So some people have benefited from returning and some people haven't. Chelsea Green was somebody who returned yesterday on Raw. We kind of talked about this on my live Raw review show. But like, Chelsea Green doesn't need to be a champion right now, but she has a gimmick that's going to get a lot of heat and it's going to get very, very annoying. And it's amazing because she doesn't need to be a champion. She could literally just be in this gimmick, get heat, get television time. People will get acclimated to her. They'll understand what she is, who she is, and why that gimmick is. And then also, if you're the WWE, once the doors open for a new contender for a women's champion, at that point, Chelsea Green could be ready. And I do like the fact that WWE kind of has a plan with Chelsea Green right away, whereas some people didn't have that. So it kind of goes back to what Albert was saying earlier. It's not a one-size-fits-all thing. It's not applicable to everybody, but there are definitely people who came back and there's not really a vision for them. But like I look at Mia Yim, for example, and I feel like they're doing pretty good there. So there are certain things that are good and certain things that are bad. It's not going to be 100% across the board. I do see more good than bad, but I also want to point that out. Like it's really, really important that after WrestleMania, when they do the draft and all of these different things, that I think that's when Triple H really will be tested. Right now, it's a little bit different because we're on the road to WrestleMania, but after WrestleMania, there cannot be any excuses for Triple H in that regard because you got to have people on TV. You got to be showcasing everything. It's very important that they do that and get it right. Um, Trevin states, Ango, do you think that with Sammy being so over as he is, could take away Cody's spotlight at WrestleMania? Absolutely not. I think right now, if anything, I know this sounds crazy, but I think right now, when it really comes down to Sami Zayn, I think everybody needs to keep their eyes out for Jey Uso. Jey Uso is the wild card in this entire situation. If you go back 2 years from how Jey Uso joined the bloodline to when Sammy joined the bloodline and the issues with Jey Uso, this man right here is the wild card. This is the guy that intrigues me the absolute most out of everything that is happening right now. And I actually think Jey Uso's story with Sammy and the bloodline and the Usos and everything, I feel like Jey Uso might take Sami Zayn's spotlight because of how good this is going to get. But Cody and Sammy, they're on different brands. I'm not too concerned about it. Um, let's see. So many stuff in the chat. Guys, if you haven't clicked that like button, can you go ahead and do that, please? Go and hit that like button. Smack that like button for me. I'd greatly appreciate it. Thank y'all in advance. Henry Martin says that Chelsea Green seems great so far. Yeah, I actually agree with this a lot. I really do. I think I'm very excited. I don't know. The whole idea of the Karen gimmick is just so freaking good for WWE. So good. She doesn't have to win a lot of matches. It doesn't matter if she wins or loses. She is a Karen. It literally works. WWE fans are gonna freaking hate this so much, which is perfect. I can't remember who said it on yesterday's post show for Raw, but somebody was like, "Oh, this is like a Vicky Guerrero type thing." It absolutely is. But the best part is Chelsea Green's gonna be an active competitor. So for me, I'm like super excited about that. I think that's really dope. But also too, Chelsea Green, you know, Matt Cardona's had reportedly signed with WWE. Like with all of this stuff that's going on, I kind of talked about it on my live show last night, so I don't want to like sit here and repeat it too much. But I was kind of talking about this thing where like Chelsea Green could be such a Karen that when she eventually doesn't get her way, Adam Pearce will sit there and bitch her out or whatever it might be. Well, the cool thing is Chelsea Green could call her husband to take care of the issue. And then that's how Matt Cardona comes back into WWE. And if I'm WWE, I would do that. Honestly, I think it would be perfect. They would benefit from it. People will be watching it. People will hate them, have them work as heels. And I just think, genuinely speaking, when I say this, wrestling fans, wrestling fans, that people use the term "go away heat" or whatever. To me, if people don't want to see Chelsea Cardona or Chelsea Green, right? Matt Cardona, Chelsea Green, if they don't want to see this because of the Karen gimmick, like that's exactly the response that they're trying to trigger. They are trying to trigger that emotional response. And I absolutely love that. So I'm super excited about that. I'm super excited about that. Cameron Johnson says Triple H's vision of wrestling is different from Vince's vision. Vince did change with the times until the 2010s. Yep, I absolutely agree. And I do want to make it a very good point that you can tell with just the fundamentals, not even just like the booking, but the fundamentals of Raw, SmackDown, and NXT have improved so much with Triple H and Power. So even with Triple H not being perfect and still making mistakes, WWE's version under Triple H is far greater than Vince McMahon's. And that's just something I genuinely believe. And some people will disagree, and that's cool. But I think WWE is in a situation where right now, Triple H has a lot of attention on him. But look at how they've delivered the success. WWE's viewership, WWE's ticket sales. I mean, all of these different milestones that they're hitting, it's really huge. It's really, really huge. And these are things that are being done with Triple H and Power. And, they're touting it. Maybe WWE sells, but whoever buys the WWE, if they do in fact sell, I think they would be super honored to have Triple H take control still, because look at how much more the company has improved, and it's only been 7 months. And by the way, I was wrong. I was wrong about Vince McMahon. Or I'm sorry, I was wrong about Triple H. I said, guys, don't expect change overnight. Don't expect any change from Triple H running WWE. I would wait a year. No, I was so wrong. Triple H literally jumped in right away and made changes right away. He brought people back, cool, but he changed the way the shows were produced. He changed the ways that the shows are being viewed and experienced. You know, we're seeing things with Alexa Bliss and Uncle Howdy, and it's like fans are so impatient that now they're losing their freaking mind because, oh, well, you want to see what happens, now you got to wait till next week. Here's a little sneak peek. Here's a little teaser, right? Here's a little bit of a teaser. I'm going to make you chase me, right? And then you got to wait till next week. And I think Triple H has kind of understood that is a good way to keep retaining fans and keep them intrigued as long as you deliver the results that they want. And so that's why I love the Bloodline storyline, because they've done that a lot with Sami Zayn and the Bloodline. Now they've done that for 6-7 months. Now we get to the Royal Rumble. Holy shit, massive payoff. Triple H is literally getting you so excited about what's going to happen next week. And you keep watching next week, and we watch the week after. Then you get to the Royal Rumble. You're super excited. You kind of instill a level of trust with WWE storytelling. And not only is it happening with Sami Zayn, but it's also kind of happened with Alexa Bliss. It's happened with Bray Wyatt and LA Knight. It's happened with Seth Rollins and Bobby Lashley and MVP and some of these things with, you know, Brock Lesnar. It's happening with the Street Profits. 1 week on TV, it looks like the Street Profits might even break up, and then they kind of go away from it. These are the little things that matter in wrestling. Even Liv Morgan, she went to the Royal Rumble. She started at number 2, finished at number 2. You know, now people are like, hey, like that was really shocking. I didn't expect that. What's going to happen next? So WWE is doing a good job of getting you anticipated, but I think wrestling fans are a little impatient, and I think the impatient fans are the ones who aren't going to like that. But deep down inside, when you're impatient, especially in wrestling, you feel so much more relief when the thing that you want happens. And we saw with Cody Rhodes winning, we saw with Rhea Ripley winning, we saw with all of these different things transpiring over TV that, you know, or the Royal Rumble or whatever it may be, we're seeing all of these things happen. And I think it's gotten to a point where, just in my personal opinion, I think we've gotten to a point where, you know, there's so much that could be done. It's just a matter of time. And I like that. I definitely do. A lot of comments coming in. Let's see. Byron Cutler says, I can't wait until Elimination Chamber. Guys, I'm super excited about the Elimination Chamber. This is a pay-per-view that actually really excites me. And I talked a lot about it last night, but the idea that WWE is going in this route of like having Theory defend the title in the chamber, having the women's chamber match, like all of these different things, you know, there's just so much potential for this pay-per-view. And I think WWE is on the right path with this. And, you know, Elimination Chamber is going to be massive. It really will be massive. So I'm excited about that. I am definitely excited about that. We got a comment from Trevin. He says, what about an LA Knight versus Pat McAfee match at Mania? The promos would be fire. Absolutely. Pat McAfee would have to lose. And I love Pat McAfee, but he would absolutely have to lose. And I think one of these days, maybe for tomorrow's Ango in the morning, we can like fantasy book a WrestleMania card or something like that. If you guys want, we can, when we go live at like 10 in the morning. But I think for sure, LA Knight versus Pat McAfee could be great. LA Knight would definitely benefit from it. But LA Knight, I don't want to see LA Knight like The Miz. The Miz, bless him, bro. I don't know. I know a lot of people hate The Miz, but for years and years and years, The Miz has been making other people look good, just like Dolph Ziggler has. And I don't want LA Knight to fall in that path. I do want to see him get at least one strong run before he becomes that overly utilized veteran that's putting over other people. So this is something I'm actually down for. But LA Knight has to win, whether he cheats, whatever it may happen. It doesn't even matter. But I would definitely be okay with that. Let's see. There's so much stuff. Flyest Freshest Prince says, who do you think will win the Elimination Chamber match? My bet would have to be Johnny Gargano. My pick is Bronson Reed. I think Bronson Reed winning would be awesome. I think there's a lot of great things that you can do there. I really, really like Bronson Reed. I love the fact that he looked so good last night on Raw. WWE has been, you know, they didn't put him in the Royal Rumble, but they made sure that he's going to be part of the Elimination Chamber match. So I like that with Triple H. I feel like Triple H did right by him. I was willing to accept that this guy didn't need to be there, if that makes sense. So for me personally, I'm all for it. I'm excited about it. My pick is Bronson Reed. Here's the good news, though. The United States Championship picture is just so freaking awesome right now. It really is. There's a lot of great talent on Raw. If I'm the WWE, let's just say, you're right. Let's say Johnny Gargano wins. I think the cool thing is you could have Johnny Gargano go into WrestleMania as champion. You can build a feud between him and Bronson Reed. When you want somebody to take the belt off of Johnny Gargano, you can have Bronson Reed do it. There are stories that could definitely be told with Johnny being a babyface champion. And I would totally be okay with that. I would not be mad about it. But if I had it my way, I would pick Bronson Reed. So that way, when Johnny Gargano does eventually win, he wins it from the big heel. It's a nice underground story for sure. Adam says Logan Paul to UFC. Yeah, so guys, if you didn't know, and I do want to spend a little bit of time talking about this. So Logan Paul dropped a video on his social media yesterday, basically teasing a announcement with the UFC. And it's very, very interesting because he's talked about it before. He wants to fight in the UFC. He mentioned it on Impulsive months ago that he wants to fight in the UFC. Dana White has never really shut it down. And it looks like Logan Paul could be going to the UFC. Now, the reason why this is intriguing to me, and I kind of started off the show, I was talking about it, right? The thing about Logan Paul, and this is just kind of how I see it, right? Logan Paul is a guy that technically he signed to WWE, but he's doing boxing. He's doing his podcast. He's doing WWE. He's doing so many different things. He's doing Drink Prime. This guy cannot be a full-time wrestler. WrestleMania is coming up. If Logan Paul goes to the UFC and he gets hurt or he loses, he gets humiliated, he gets embarrassed, that impacts Logan Paul in the WWE. So this idea that Logan Paul is teasing the fact that he's joining the UFC is very strange to me. Now, initially when I saw the video, I was thinking that maybe Drink Prime, his energy drink or whatever, I was thinking that maybe his energy drink could become a sponsor for the UFC. That was something that I kind of thought might be a scenario. But I just think it's super strange. To be honest, I'm just being honest. I think it's super strange that WWE would even let him do the UFC if that's the case. Because why would you put him at risk? He has there's just so much shit that I've learned throughout time, man, with wrestling. And like CM Punk is the perfect example. Fuck, dude. Okay, I was a little bit too loud right there. But think about it. CM Punk goes to the UFC, he gets humiliated. Okay? That's the reality. He gets humiliated. He has no value for X amount of time. We don't see him in WWE for 7 years. He does come back 7 years later. He goes to AEW. Then there's drama with CM Punk. I mean, there's a lot more to the story. But my point that I'm making is with CM Punk in UFC, he lost. He got humiliated. It did not look good for wrestling. MMA analysts were out there. They're like, yeah, when you do that WWE shit, you're not going to be good in the UFC. Obviously, that's not true because we saw Jake Hager do pretty good in Bellator. We saw Bobby Lashley do pretty good in MMA. We saw Dave Bautista do somewhat good. Brock Lesnar obviously is a good case study. But if a WWE wrestler goes into the UFC and they don't do good, it's looked at really bad for pro wrestling. Logan Paul is in a weird phase in his life because he is still known as Logan Paul, the influencer, the YouTuber, right? But also, Logan Paul is a WWE superstar now. Whoever they put him with in the UFC could be a really, 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 really interesting situation. Because Logan Paul right now, as it stands, this is just how I see it. Maybe I'm right, maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. But Logan Paul and versus Seth Rollins is a massive match. Massive match. Logan Paul goes and wins his match against Seth Rollins. Or if Logan Paul I'm sorry. If Logan Paul wins his match against Seth Rollins, it looks good. If he loses his match against Seth Rollins, it looks good. Because you can justify him winning or losing by storytelling. He's a new guy, whatever. But if you go from pro wrestling, which is scripted television, sports, entertainment, to a very legitimate combat sport, and he loses, I don't think it looks good. And I don't know. Triple H loves combat sports. You know, I don't know how this works. I don't know how they go about it. But the idea that Logan Paul would put himself in a situation where he could potentially get hurt, I just think it's dumb. And I'm surprised that WWE would allow it because Logan Paul draws big numbers. His spot with Ricochet had been viewed over 20 million times in 24 hours. So whether you like Logan Paul, whether you don't, I mean, that's up to you guys. You know, you choose to like or dislike who you want. I'm not going to tell you guys who to like or dislike. I'm speaking specifically from what I see on my WWE television show. When Logan Paul is on there, he's great. And as far as Crypto Zoo and all these other things that people are talking about with Logan Paul, I don't do enough research on it. I don't look into it too much because I don't care, because I'm not sitting here getting involved in those types of things. I don't get involved on the cryptocurrency stuff. You know, I don't get involved with that stuff. I don't look at it. I'm not interested in crypto. I'm not. I at one point I researched it, and the more and more that I researched it, I just thought it was all stupid and silly, anyways. So I know some people will bring up Crypto Zoo or, you know, all these, you know, 99 Originals and all these other things that Logan Paul is involved with. Whatever the case may be for that, form your own opinion, do your own research. You could form your own opinion. But I'm just talking strictly from a wrestling standpoint. What he does on WWE television, he is very good. And I think you don't want to risk that by him going to the UFC. Personally, that's just how I feel about it. That's just kind of how I see it. Albert Pons dropped a $5 super chat. NWA Power live tonight on YouTube. Tyrus Matt Cardona for 10 pounds of gold. LFG, no, really, please. It's sad he won the belt at all. LOL. Guys, I don't know if you watch NWA. I definitely don't watch the NWA. But yeah, now they're doing live tonight, and I think it is on YouTube. So I will probably tune in. A lot of people ask me, they're like, Ango, why don't you watch NWA Power? Why don't you watch NWA? And I think Billy Corgan has a lot of potential. I think he understands wrestling. I think he is very smart, but also at the same time too, as I say that, I really do question the idea of putting Tyrus as your world champion. Forget about, you know, and this is just the reality. Because look, Tyrus, he's got his own show on Fox and he brings the championship belt with him. And I get it. It might be a smart business move, but like, it just doesn't make sense. This guy, from an in-ring perspective, is just really not that talented, in my opinion. He doesn't possess a character that I care about. He might be a really cool guy. He might be a really nice guy, but from the way wrestling, and you guys know with what I like about wrestling, I just don't think he has a character, or he doesn't have an intrigue about him that makes me care to watch him as a world champion. Matt Cardona does. You know, there's other people in NWA who do have that intrigue. You know, and NWA has done some cool stuff with Colby Carino. Now he's going to NXT. But I just think this is like, there's a lot of certain things with NWA. I don't like the nostalgia. I don't care for the nostalgia stuff. I think the presentation is kind of whack. And I get it. It's not designed to please Ango. But at the end of the day, that's probably why I don't watch it as much. I'm hoping with them going live tonight, it'll be interesting. I hope it'll be entertaining. I'm hoping that maybe Matt Cardona does win the NWA championship. I don't know, but I want to see something different for NWA tonight. And obviously it's their first live episode. So I do hope that they're actually going to have some surprises, but NWA, its presentation is not fitting for me. I don't care about its presentation, to be honest. I don't care with the way it's presented. I don't think it's designed for people my age to watch it. And maybe that's Billy Corgan's idea, but look at it from the perspective of, you know, just like Steve just brought it up too. You know, Steve said, where is it? Steve said, no wonder why Nick Aldis is leaving NWA. Yeah, like there's just a lot of drama and unnecessary bullshit that's kind of associated with that company right now. And it's unfortunate, but that's just kind of the way it is. So, you know, I'll kind of leave it at that, right? I don't know what the NWA is doing, but I got to admit, like when I see the NWA, I don't get excited about it. Tonight I'll tune in. I think it's I could be wrong what time it is, but I do think it's around the time of NXT or after NXT. And I'll probably be live for NXT after the fact, so I'll talk about it and we'll kind of go from there. But yeah, definitely not interested in NWA. Don't expect to be interested in NWA. But who knows? Maybe tonight there will be something good. Maybe they get the belt off Tyrus. Maybe they decide to change their presentation. They probably won't. Billy Corgan loves nostalgia, but unfortunately, it ain't for me. MLW, Impact, GCW, WWE, AEW, AAA, CMLL, NJPW, NJPW Strong, which is being changed, by the way. But there's a lot of good wrestling out there. NWA doesn't really stand out for me, in my opinion, and it's kind of the issue that I have. So, Albert, thank you for your super chat. Guys, if you want to get a super chat in, feel free to drop one because we are ending the show in just a few minutes. So definitely get those super chats in before we end the show. Shout out to Jose. Ango is the freaking man. Thanks for all the content and for doing what you do. Thank you, Jose. I appreciate that. I love doing this. I love talking wrestling with you guys. I love reading your guys' comments. I love going live. I love talking about wrestling. I am going to have a pretty big wrestling news video drop in a matter of moments, actually. So after the stream, stay tuned to the channel because you guys will see some new content today. And yeah, I mean, right now I kind of enjoy this format of going live at 10 in the morning. I think for the most part, we'll do, like I said, Ango in the morning. Let me hide that. Sorry. I think what I'll do is my live shows at 10 in the morning. It's like more opinion based. We'll do more of this type of stuff. We'll talk about wrestling. I'll read your guys' comments, read your stuff. We'll respond. We'll talk. We'll do a lot more opinion based, more podcast style type stuff. And then also I think for the Ango show live, because we're gonna call this Ango in the morning, right? But for the Ango show live, which is the post shows and stuff like that, that's just going to be after Raw, SmackDown, whatever. So I want to definitely do more of this stuff. I think the morning concept works. I think there's a couple things. There's nothing permanent about it by any means, but viewership seems to be pretty sweet, and you guys seem to be pretty active. So I appreciate that. Yeah, I'm super excited, man. I'm super excited. Last few comments before we go. Make sure you guys get in those super chats before we do go, because I don't want you guys to drop super chats after the fact, because then I can't respond to you on stream. So try to get those in before we go. Nate says, I think I might be going to AEW Double or Nothing. AEW has been great at storytelling. They kind of fell off with it last year, but they're back, and I might go to an AEW pay-per-view again this time and travel for it. Nate, I think I said this a couple times. I said the last 6 weeks of AEW television has been the best they've ever done. And I'm very firm on that, very adamant about that. And, people will talk about pro wrestling versus sports entertainment, but in the last 6 weeks, AEW did a lot more sports entertainment. And it just so happens that it's been pretty entertaining. So maybe sports entertainment, we don't all have to fucking, you know what I'm saying? We don't all have to fucking be like, oh, sports entertainment versus pro wrestling. It's all sports entertainment. It's all good. I think AEW and WWE have been really good lately. AEW's last 6 weeks have been really good. WWE's been great for the last several months. And I just hope AEW keeps up the momentum, really, because like the storylines are good. There's continuity every week, which I think is so huge. And yeah, I'm super excited about that. Elizabeth says, Ango, will we see you on WWE? That's a great question. Definitely shout out to you, Elizabeth, for asking this. No, I'm not signed to WWE. I won't probably be on WWE. But hey, if Triple H is watching, William Regal's watching, William Regal's a scout. So, if they're interested, I would love to. I've always had the dream of being on the bump or like a pre-show or something like that. Or I don't know. I just always feel like I can do it. Put on a nice suit, get a fresh lineup from the barber, with the WWE microphone in my hand or AEW microphone or NXT or Impact. You never know. You never know, my friends. But you guys got to tell them to sign me. I can't do anything about that. Jose says, are you going to shave your head? Yeah, if I hit 100,000 subscribers. Hashtag sign Ango. Yes. Any word if SummerSlam is coming to Detroit? That seems to be the case. That definitely seems to be the case. So if SummerSlam comes to Detroit, I'll definitely be there. We'll figure something out. But anyways, guys, we'll call it a night. Elizabeth Anderson says, Ango, give us a woo. I'm going to give it to you guys. We're going to sign off with this woo. Woo. Okay, yeah, I'm going to I don't want to break your eardrums. But anyways, thank you guys. Appreciate you all for stopping by. This was fun. I'll see you guys later. New video dropping very shortly with tons of big wrestling news. So make sure you guys check it out. And I will, in fact, see you guys next time.